Commander Taman stood before the massive viewing screen on his ship. His long, thin fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease. The blue and green planet called Earth filled the entire screen. White clouds swirled around its surface like paint in water. "Beautiful," whispered Jinwoo, his tactical analyst, "and so defenseless." Taman nodded. His crystalline skin caught the light from Earth's reflection, creating small rainbows across his face. The Veltar had conquered 17 worlds in the past century. Earth would be number 18. It would also be the easiest. For 6 months, Taman's fleet had studied this small planet. Their invisible ships floated in space, watching everything. The humans below had no idea they were being observed. They lived their simple lives, completely unaware of the storm coming their way. "Show me the reports again," Taman commanded. Jinwoo pressed several buttons. Information filled the air above them in glowing letters and numbers. Population data, military strength, technology levels, and government structures appeared like floating ghosts. "Humans have no unified government," Jinwoo read aloud. "Over 200 separate nations. Many are at war with each other. Their weapons are primitive. Chemical explosives and metal projectiles. No energy shields. No plasma cannons. Their fastest ships cannot even leave their own solar system." Taman smiled. His teeth were sharp like diamonds. "What about their physical capabilities?" "Weak," another officer called out from across the command deck. This was Hyunwoo, their biology expert. "Average human weighs only 70 kilograms. Soft skin with no natural armor. No claws, no venom, no protective shells. They break easily." "Their strength?" Taman asked. "Pathetic compared to the apex predators on their own world. A human cannot lift more than twice their body weight. Many cannot even do that. They tire quickly. They need sleep for 8 hours every day. They must eat every few hours or they become weak." Taman walked closer to the screen. Earth looked so peaceful, so vulnerable, like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. "Tell me about their military forces," he said. Jinwoo pulled up new information. Pictures of human soldiers appeared in the air. They wore heavy clothes and carried metal weapons that shot small pieces of metal very fast. "Their largest armies have maybe 1 million soldiers," Jinwoo explained. "But these forces are spread across their entire planet. They fight in small groups. No coordination between different nations. When we land, they will not be able to work together to stop us." "What about their space defenses?" "None worth mentioning," Hyunwoo laughed. "They have a few hundred satellites in orbit, mostly for communication and weather watching. No weapons, platforms. No defensive shields around their planet. They are sitting ducks." Taman had seen this pattern before on other worlds. Advanced civilizations grew soft and weak. They focused on comfort instead of strength. They argued among themselves instead of preparing for real threats. Earth was perfect for conquest. "How long for complete victory?" Taman asked. 6 weeks, Jinwoo answered without hesitation. "Maybe less. Once we destroy their major cities, from orbit, the rest will surrender. They always do." Taman remembered the last world they had conquered. The beings there were stronger than humans, with thick hide and powerful arms. But they had surrendered after losing 3 cities. Fear was a powerful weapon, much more efficient than actually fighting. "What about their nuclear weapons?" asked another officer. "They have them," Hyunwoo admitted, "but not many, and they are slow. Our ships can easily avoid them or shoot them down. Besides, they would not use them on their own planet. They care too much about their environment and their people." This was another weakness Taman had observed in other species. Caring too much made beings predictable. The Veltar cared only about winning. This made them strong. "Sir," said a young officer named Minjae, "should we study them longer? Learn more about their culture and habits?" Taman turned to look at him. Minjae was new to the conquest fleet. He still asked unnecessary questions. "What is there to learn?" Taman replied. "They are weak. They are divided. They have no real weapons. Culture is irrelevant when you have superior force." The command deck fell silent. Everyone knew Taman was right. They had conquered worlds with beings twice as strong as humans. They had defeated civilizations with better technology. They had crushed united empires that covered multiple planets. Earth was just another rock with some interesting resources in a convenient location. The humans living there were simply in the way. Begin preparation for Phase 1, Taman ordered. I want landing sites identified within 48 hours. Target their largest population centers first. We will start with this place called New York, then London, then Tokyo. What about resistance fighters? Minjae asked. On other worlds, some beings continued fighting even after their government surrendered. Taman waved his hand dismissively. Look at them, he said, pointing at the screen showing busy human cities. They live in glass towers and work at desks. They get their food from stores instead of hunting. Most have never seen real violence. When they see our ships in their sky and their leaders surrender, they will accept their new situation quickly. The officers around the command deck nodded in agreement. The data supported everything Taman said. Humans were the weakest species they had ever encountered. This conquest would be remembered as the easiest victory in Veltar history. Set course for the staging area behind their moon, Taman commanded. Full invasion fleet. 80 ships should be more than enough. As his ship began to move, Taman looked at Earth one more time. Soon it would belong to the Veltar Empire. The humans would work in their mines and factories. The planet's resources would fuel the next expansion. Everything was going according to plan. He had no way of knowing that at that very moment far below on Earth's surface, a forest ranger named Nari was walking through the mountains of Canada. She carried only basic equipment and had never heard of the Veltar Empire. But in less than 24 hours, she would do something that would change the entire course of galactic history. The invasion fleet moved through space like a dark cloud approaching a peaceful village. 80 ships filled with thousands of warriors, ready to claim another world for their empire. They were confident, prepared, and absolutely certain of victory. They were also completely wrong about what they were about to face. Nari stepped carefully over the fallen log blocking the mountain trail. Her boots made soft sounds on the pine needles covering the ground. The morning air was cold and clean, filled with the smell of trees and distant snow. She had been a forest ranger for 8 years, and mornings like this still made her feel lucky to have this job. Her radio crackled to life. Nari, we got a report of some lost hikers up near Bear Creek Falls, family of 4. They went out yesterday and never came. Back. Nari pressed the button on her radio. Copy that. I'm about 2 kilometers from there now. On my way. She picked up her pace, following the narrow trail that wound through the thick forest. Bear Creek Falls was a popular spot for tourists, but it was easy to get lost if you left the main path. The area was also home to several grizzly bears getting ready for winter. They were more aggressive this time of year, eating as much as they could before the cold months. High above Nari's head, invisible to human eyes, a small alien probe followed her movement through the trees. The device was no bigger than a bird, but packed with advanced technology. It recorded everything she did and sent the information back to the Veltar fleet hiding behind Earth's moon. On the command ship, Hyunwoo watched the probe's transmission on his screen. He was bored. For days he had been monitoring random humans to gather final intelligence before the invasion. Most did nothing interesting. They sat in offices, drove cars, or watched entertainment on their screens. This human female was just walking through a forest? Another boring specimen, he muttered to himself. Nari reached Bear Creek Falls after 30 minutes of hiking. The waterfall was beautiful, dropping 20 meters down black rock into a clear pool below. But she quickly noticed something wrong. Camping equipment was scattered around the area. A backpack lay open with clothes spilled out. Food containers were torn apart and empty. "Hello," she called out loudly. "Forest Service, if anyone can hear me, call out." A weak voice answered from somewhere across the creek. "Help! We're over. Here." Nari looked across the water and saw them. A family was trapped on a small rocky area surrounded by thick bushes. A man, woman, and 2 children huddled together. They looked scared and tired. "Are you hurt?" Nari shouted. "My son twisted his ankle," the man called back. "We tried to cross back over, but the water is too deep and fast." Nari studied the situation. The creek was running high from recent rains. The current was strong, and the water was very cold. But she could make it across if she was careful. "I'm coming to get you," she yelled. "Stay where you are." She was about to step into the water when she heard it. A low, rumbling sound that made her blood turn to ice. She turned slowly and saw the grizzly bear. The animal was massive, at least 3 meters tall when standing on its back legs. Its brown fur was thick and shaggy, ready for winter. Its small black eyes looked angry and hungry. The bear had probably been attracted by the smell of the family's food. Now it saw potential meals trapped in front of it. High above, Hyunwoo suddenly became very interested in his screen. This was not boring anymore. "Fascinating," he whispered. "A large predator. Let me see how the human reacts." The bear dropped to all 4 legs and started walking toward the family. It moved slowly, but with complete confidence. The man across the creek saw it coming and gathered his wife and children closer together. The woman started crying quietly. Nari looked at her equipment. She had a radio, first aid supplies, emergency flares, and a hiking stick. No weapons. Rangers were not allowed to carry guns in this area. The closest help was hours away. Any reasonable person would retreat and call for backup. The bear was easily 4 times her weight and armed with claws that could tear through metal. Fighting it would be suicide, but the family would be dead long before help arrived. Nari took a deep breath and made her decision. She grabbed her hiking stick and stepped directly between the bear and the trapped family. The creek was behind her, the massive predator in front of her. She raised the stick above her head and started yelling, "Hey! Hey bear, look at me, I'm over here!" The bear stopped and turned toward her, its eyes focused on this new threat. Nari made herself as big as possible, raising her arms and continuing to shout, "Come on, you want some? Come get me instead." On the command ship, Hyunwoo leaned forward in his chair. This was impossible. The human was challenging a predator that outweighed her by hundreds of kilograms. She should be running away. All their data said humans were cowardly when facing superior force. The bear took a step toward Nari, then another. It was testing her, trying to decide if she was a real threat or just making noise. Nari reached into her pack and pulled out an emergency flare. She struck it against the striker and bright red fire blazed to life. The bear stopped, confused by the sudden light and smell. "That's right," Nari yelled, waving the flare. "You don't like that, do you?" But the bear was not giving up. It had decided that all these humans looked like food. It reared up on its back legs again, towering over Nari, and let out a roar that echoed off the mountains. Any sane creature would have run. Instead, Nari roared back. She charged straight at the bear, swinging her hiking stick and brandishing the flare like a sword. Her voice carried across the forest as she screamed at the animal with pure human fury. The bear was so shocked that it actually took a step backward. For several seconds, woman and bear faced each other in the clearing. The grizzly was bigger, stronger, and armed with natural weapons. But Nari had something the bear could not understand. She was not fighting for her own survival. She was fighting for the lives of strangers who needed her help. The bear tried to swipe at her with one massive paw. Nari jumped backward, then immediately jumped forward again, jabbing at the animal's nose with her stick. She was faster than the bear expected and smarter. She stayed just out of reach of its claws while keeping the flare between them. "Go away," she screamed. "Leave us alone." On the alien ship, Hyunwoo called out to his commander, "Sir, you need to see this. Something very unusual is happening." Taemin walked over to Hyunwoo's screen. He watched the human female fighting an animal that should have killed her easily. According to all their data, this was impossible. "Why? Is she not retreating?" Taemin asked. "I do not know, sir. She is protecting other humans who are not even related to her. The behavior makes no logical sense." Back in the forest, the battle continued. Nari was getting tired, but she refused to give up. Every time the bear tried to get around her to reach the family, she moved to block its path. She used the flare to keep it at bay and her voice to keep it focused on her instead of the easier targets behind her. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the bear had enough. This strange human was more trouble than she was worth. There were easier meals somewhere else in the forest. The grizzly turned and walked away, disappearing into the thick trees. Nari collapsed to her knees, shaking from exhaustion and fear. But she had won. The family was safe. "Are you okay?" the man called from across the creek. "Yeah," Nari replied, breathing hard. "Just give me a minute." She looked down at her hands. They were trembling, but she was alive. More importantly, 4 other people were alive because she had refused to run away. High above, in the darkness of space, Hyunwoo stared at his screen in complete silence. Everything the Veltar Empire thought they knew about humans was wrong. The recording played for the 15th time on the main screen of the command deck. Every officer watched in stunned silence as the human female faced down the massive predator. The image froze at the moment when she charged straight at the bear. Her face twisted with determination and fury. "Run it again," Commander Taemin ordered quietly. "Sir," Jinwoo said carefully, "we have watched this sequence many times. The outcome does not change. Run it again." The tactical analyst pressed the controls. Once more they watched Nari step between the bear and the trapped family. Once more they saw her choose to fight instead of flee. Once more they witnessed something that challenged everything they believed about human nature. When the recording ended, the command deck remained silent. Finally, Taemin spoke. "Explanations?" Hyunwoo cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, I have reviewed our biological data on humans multiple times. This behavior should not be possible. The human female weighed approximately 60 kilograms. The bear weighed over 300 kilograms. Basic survival instinct should have made her retreat immediately." "Perhaps she was genetically modified," suggested Jinwoo. "Enhanced with artificial improvements?" "Negative," Hyunwoo replied. "Our sensors detected no artificial enhancements. No cybernetic implants, no chemical boosters, no genetic modifications. She was completely natural." "Then she must have been insane," said another officer. "Mental illness would explain irrational behavior." Taemin shook his head. "Watch her actions carefully. Every move was calculated. She used the flare strategically. She kept herself between the predator and the other humans at all times. She made herself appear larger to intimidate the animal. These are not the actions of an insane being. They show tactical intelligence." A young officer named Seung-jae raised his hand hesitantly. "Sir, what if this is normal behavior for humans? What if our data is incomplete?" The suggestion sent a chill through the command deck. If this was normal human behavior, then their entire invasion plan was based on false assumptions. "Impossible," Jinwoo said quickly. "We have observed thousands of humans for months. Most live peaceful lives in cities. They work at desks, watch entertainment, buy food from stores. They are clearly a domesticated species." "Then explain this recording," Taemin demanded. "Nobody could. I want more data," Taemin ordered. "Deploy all surveillance probes. I want to know if this incident was unique or if there are others like it. Search their information networks. Look for similar events in their recent history." For the next 48 hours, the Veltar fleet worked around the clock. Dozens of invisible probes spread across Earth's surface, recording human behavior in different situations. The results were disturbing. Seung-jae reported his findings first. "Sir, I found video records of a human female named Yuna. She works as what they call a firefighter. 3 weeks ago, she entered a burning building to rescue children trapped inside. The structure was collapsing. She made 4 separate trips into the flames. She saved 6 children." "Chemical enhancement?" Taemin asked hopefully. "No, sir. Standard human physiology. She was injured during the rescue but continued working until all the children were safe." Another officer spoke up. "I observed a human male named Woo Jin. 2 days ago, he was in a store when armed criminals entered. The criminals had weapons. Woo Jin had nothing. But when they threatened to hurt a female store clerk, he attacked them. He fought 3 armed humans to protect a stranger. Outcome? He was wounded but victorious. The criminals fled. The store clerk survived unharmed. More reports came in throughout the day. Humans jumping into stormy oceans to save drowning swimmers. Humans fighting off wild animals to protect their young. Humans sharing food with strangers during natural disasters. Humans donating their own blood to help injured people they had never met. Each incident followed the same pattern. Humans facing overwhelming odds. Humans choosing to fight when retreat would be safer. Humans risking their lives for others with no possibility of reward. Dong Hyun, their senior xenobiologist, presented the most troubling information of all. Sir, I have been studying their historical records. Humans have survived multiple extinction events on their planet. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Plagues that killed millions. Each time they not only survived but became stronger. How is that possible? Taemin asked. They adapt, Donghyun explained. When faced with impossible challenges, they change their behavior, their technology, their entire society if necessary, and they never give up. He pulled up images of human warfare throughout history. Look at these battles, sir. Humans fighting against impossible odds. Sometimes they lose, but they keep fighting anyway. They have a concept they call Pyrrhic victory, winning a battle at such great cost that it destroys the winner. Only humans would consider that a form of success. The images showed humans charging into machine gun fire, holding defensive positions, against overwhelming numbers, continuing to fight even when their leaders were dead and their cities were burning. Most disturbing of all, Donghyun continued, they seem to enjoy challenging themselves. They create artificial difficulties they call sports. They climb dangerous mountains for no reason except to prove they can do it. They race vehicles at deadly speeds. They compete to see who can endure the most physical punishment. Taemin stared at the data in growing horror. You are telling me that humans deliberately seek out dangerous situations? Yes, sir. They have an expression. What does not kill us makes us stronger. They believe that facing hardship improves their character. The command deck fell silent again. Every officer was thinking the same thing. If humans enjoyed fighting impossible battles, what would happen when the Veltar fleet appeared in their skies? Sir, Jinwoo said slowly, I am beginning to think we may have underestimated this species. Taemin looked at the frozen image of Nari facing down the bear. Such a small creature, so fragile-looking. But she had done something that no Veltar warrior would attempt. She had chosen to fight when fighting meant certain death, because other lives depended on her courage. What do our military analysts predict will happen if we proceed with the invasion? Taemin asked. Seungjae checked his reports. Based on this, new data, sir, they estimate the humans will not surrender after we destroy their major cities. Instead, they will disperse into smaller groups and continue fighting. Urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, suicide attacks. The conquest could take years instead of weeks. Acceptable losses? Unknown, sir. We have never faced an enemy that fights harder when they are losing. Our models cannot predict their behavior. Taemin made a decision that surprised everyone. On the command deck, contact the War Council. Request immediate consultation before we proceed. Sir? Jinwoo asked in shock. Are you suggesting we delay the invasion? I am suggesting, Taemin replied carefully, that we need to reconsider our strategy. This species is not what we expected. They may be physically weak, but they possess something we did not account for. What is that, sir? Taemin looked at Nari's image one more time. The human female looked so ordinary, like millions of other humans living peaceful lives on their planet. But when the moment came, she had revealed something extraordinary. They have something our empire lost long ago, he said quietly. They still remember how to be brave. The War Council chambers aboard the flagship Divine Conquest were built to intimidate. The room was circular, with towering walls of black crystal that reached up into darkness. 12 members of the Veltar High Command sat in chairs carved from single blocks of stone, each one representing millions of warriors across the empire. Commander Taemin stood in the center of the circle, feeling very small. In his 4 decades of military service, he had never requested an emergency council session. Now he was about to tell the most powerful beings in the galaxy that their perfect invasion plan was flawed. Supreme Leader Jihan spoke first. His voice was like grinding metal, aged by centuries of conquest. Commander Taemin, you have requested this council just 3 days before our scheduled invasion of Earth. Explain. Taemin activated the holographic projector. The image of Nari fighting the bear appeared in the air above them, life-sized and detailed. The council members leaned forward to study it. This recording was taken yesterday by one of our surveillance probes. A single human female, armed only, with primitive tools engaged a predator that outweighed her by several hundred kilograms. She won. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo laughed harshly. One incident proves nothing, Commander. Perhaps this individual was mentally defective. Respectfully, sir, this was not an isolated incident. Taemin activated more projections. Images filled the air around them. Humans fighting fires, rescuing drowning victims, battling armed criminals, protecting their young from wild animals. In the past 48 hours, we have documented over 300 similar events across their planet. Humans consistently choose to fight when retreat would be safer. They regularly risk their lives to protect strangers. They seem to possess an irrational compulsion to face overwhelming odds. Council member Hanul studied the images carefully. Show us their military capabilities again. Taemin displayed the standard intelligence data: human armies, weapons, defensive positions. On the surface, it looked as pathetic as before. Primitive firearms, slow vehicles, no energy shields. Their technology remains inferior to ours, Taemin admitted. But our initial assessment of their psychological profile was incorrect. We assumed they would behave like other conquered species. We were wrong. In what way? Demanded Jihan. Taemin took a deep breath. This was the moment that could end his career. Sir, we assumed that humans would surrender when faced with superior force. All our previous conquests followed this pattern. Destroy the enemy's major cities, demonstrate overwhelming power, and they submit to avoid further casualties. And now you believe humans will not follow this pattern? Correct, sir. Based on their historical records and observed behavior, humans fight harder when they are losing. They have a concept called last stands, where small groups fight to the death rather than surrender. They consider this honorable. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo shook his head. Impossible. No rational species chooses certain death over survival. Humans are not rational by our standards, sir. Taemin activated another projection. This is their historical record of warfare. Notice the pattern. The hologram showed centuries of human conflicts. Battles where smaller armies defeated larger ones. Sieges where defenders held out for years against impossible odds. Entire nations that continued fighting even after their capitals were captured. They have a saying, Taemin continued, never give up, never surrender. This is not just a military motto. It appears to be fundamental to their species' psychology. Council member Youngmin leaned forward. Commander, are you suggesting that our fleet of 80 ships cannot defeat a primitive planet? No, sir. We can destroy their cities and kill millions of them, but complete conquest may be impossible. They will not submit. They will disperse into smaller units and continue fighting indefinitely. Then we kill them all, Sunwoo said coldly. That would take decades, sir, and the cost in resources and personnel would be enormous. We have intercepted their entertainment media. They produce stories about small groups fighting impossible battles against invading forces. They celebrate these defeats as victories. Taemin activated one more projection. This one showed human entertainment, movies, books, and games where heroic underdogs battled superior enemies. The humans watching these stories cheered for the smaller, weaker side. They fantasize about fighting enemies exactly like us, sir. They train themselves mentally for this scenario through their entertainment. They want to fight overwhelming odds. The council chamber fell silent. The members exchanged glances with each other, communicating through subtle changes in their crystalline skin color. Finally, Jihan spoke. You believe they would welcome our invasion? Not welcome it, sir, but embrace it as an opportunity to prove themselves. Our intelligence indicates they become bored during peacetime. They create artificial conflicts to challenge themselves. An alien invasion would be the ultimate test of their species. Council member Yunbin had been studying the recordings without speaking. Now she activated her own controls, zooming in on Nari's face during the bear encounter. "Look at her expression," Yunbin said quietly. "She is terrified, but she fights anyway. This is not confidence or superior training. This is something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Jihan asked. "She knows she will probably die, but she chooses to fight because it is the right thing to do. She values the lives of strangers more than her own survival." The implications of this statement hit the council like a physical blow. A species that valued abstract concepts like duty and honor above survival was unpredictable in the worst possible way. Taman nodded grimly. "Our psychological warfare tactics assume that all beings prioritize their own survival above everything else. Humans do not. They will sacrifice themselves for their families, their friends, even complete strangers. This makes them impossible to control through fear." "What do you recommend?" Jihan asked. "Delay the invasion indefinitely. Designate Earth as a quarantine world. Study them further before attempting any contact." Fleet Admiral Sunwoo stood up angrily. "This is cowardice. Our empire has conquered 17 worlds. We will not be stopped by primitive savages who do not know when they are beaten." "Sir," Taman said carefully, "those 17 worlds were populated by rational beings who understood cost-benefit analysis. When we demonstrated superior force, they submitted because continued resistance would have been costly and pointless. Humans do not make decisions based on rational analysis." He activated a final projection. This one showed historical records of human military defeats, armies that fought until every soldier was dead, cities that burned rather than surrender, entire populations that chose extinction over slavery. "Look at this battle from their historical records," Taman explained. 300 humans held a mountain pass against an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They lasted for 3 days. When it was over, all 300 humans were dead, but they had killed so many enemies that the invasion failed. "And humans celebrate this defeat?" Hanul asked in amazement. "They built monuments to it, sir. They teach their children about it in schools. They made entertainment media about it. They consider it one of their greatest victories." The council members looked at each other again. Their skin colors shifted through patterns of confusion and concern. "Commander," Jihan said slowly, "are you telling us that humans consider dying in battle to be a form of winning?" "Yes, sir. They have multiple concepts for this: martyrdom, heroic sacrifice, Pyrrhic victory. They believe that how you die is more important than whether you die." Fleet Admiral Sunwoo sat back down heavily. For the first time in his career, he looked uncertain. "How many casualties do our analysts predict if we proceed?" he asked quietly. "Unknown, sir. Possibly the entire invasion fleet. Humans have a documented history of using suicide tactics against superior enemies. They attach explosives to themselves and detonate them in the middle of enemy formations. They crash their aircraft into our ships. They fight with such desperation that victory becomes meaningless." The War Council chamber fell silent again. 12 of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy sat staring at images of a species that should have been easy prey. Instead, they were looking at their worst nightmare, an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be intimidated, and would never stop fighting. Finally, Supreme Leader Jihan made the decision that would echo through Veltar history: motion to postpone the invasion of Earth indefinitely. All in favor? 11 hands rose in the darkness. Fleet Admiral Sunwoo was the last to vote. He looked at the image of Nari one more time, then slowly raised his hand. Motion carried. Commander Taman, withdraw all forces from the Sol system immediately. The Veltar fleet moved through space like ghosts leaving a graveyard. 80 ships that had arrived with confidence in certain victory now departed in confused retreat. Their running lights were dimmed, their crews silent at their stations. For the first time in the Empire's history, they were withdrawing from a target world not because of superior technology or military might, but because of fear. Commander Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow smaller on the viewing screen. The blue and white planet looked as peaceful as ever, completely unaware of how close it had come to invasion. The humans below continued their daily lives, never knowing that their fate had been decided by a forest ranger's courage in a remote Canadian wilderness. "Final probe recall complete, sir," reported Jinwoo. "All surveillance equipment has been retrieved or destroyed. No trace of our presence remains." "Course plotted for the Kepler station," added Navigation Officer Minjae. "We will be clear of this solar system within 6 hours." Taman nodded but said nothing. His mind was still processing what had happened. In 4 decades of military service, he had never experienced anything like this. A complete mission cancellation based on the actions of a single individual who didn't even know she was being observed. "Sir," said a young officer named Hanul, "what will we tell the other fleet commanders? They will want to know why we retreated from such a weak target." "We will tell them the truth," Taman replied. "That weakness and strength are not always what they appear to be." Far below on Earth's surface, Nari was finishing her shift at the ranger station. She had filed her report about the bear encounter, checked the weather forecast for tomorrow, and locked up the equipment. It had been a normal day in her normal life. The family she had saved had sent a thank you card, which now sat on her desk next to a photo of the mountains she protected. She had no idea that her few minutes of courage had changed the course of galactic history. "Another quiet day," she said to herself as she walked to her truck. "Sometimes I wonder if anything interesting ever happens around here." If she had looked up at the night sky at that exact moment, she might have seen a faint glimmer of light, moving among the stars. But it was too small and too distant to notice, just another piece of space debris burning up in the atmosphere. She climbed into her truck and drove home, thinking about dinner and tomorrow's patrol route. On the command ship, Taman was preparing his final report to the War Council. The words came slowly, each sentence a challenge to everything the Veltar's empire believed about conquest and strength. Personal log, Commander Taman, mission designation Solar 3 reconnaissance and invasion. He spoke into the recording device. Mission status aborted. Reason: target species demonstrates unpredictable behavioral patterns inconsistent with standard conquest protocols. He paused, looking at the frozen image of Nari facing the bear that still glowed on one of his screens. After extensive observation, we have determined that humans possess a psychological trait that makes them unsuitable for standard subjugation techniques. They demonstrate willingness to fight regardless of odds, casualties, or logical outcomes. They value abstract concepts like honor and duty above personal survival. Most significantly, they appear to become more dangerous when facing superior opponents. The recording device waited patiently for him to continue. Recommendation: Earth should be designated as a restricted system. No further contact until we develop methods to deal with this species' unique mental characteristics. They are not a threat to the Empire in terms of technology or military power, but their unpredictable nature makes them too dangerous to conquer safely. Taman ended the recording and filed it in the classified archives. Somewhere in the depths of Veltar High Command, analysts would study his report and try to understand how a forest ranger with a hiking stick had defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy without firing a shot. Months passed. The Veltar fleet moved on to other targets, other worlds with more predictable populations. They conquered a technologically advanced civilization that surrendered after losing 2 cities. They subjugated a warrior species that recognized superior force and accepted defeat gracefully. These victories restored some confidence to the fleet, but the memory of Earth lingered. Young Officer Hanul found himself studying human behavior in his spare time. He accessed the archived recordings from Earth, watching humans in various situations. What he saw confused and fascinated him. A species that created art about lost battles. A civilization that celebrated individuals who died protecting strangers. Beings who seemed to measure success not by what they gained, but by what they were willing to sacrifice. "Why do they do it?" he asked Taman one day. "Why do they fight when they cannot win?" Taman considered the question carefully. "I think," he said slowly, "they fight because they believe some things are more important than winning." Like what? Like the idea that someone has to stand between the innocent and the dangerous. That someone has to say no, when evil demands submission, that how you live matters more than how long you live. Hanel shook his head. That makes no logical sense. No, Taman agreed. But it makes them impossible to defeat. Back on Earth, life continued normally. Humans went to work, raised their families, watched their entertainment, and never suspected they were being observed from space. But if they had known, most would not have been surprised by what the aliens discovered. In schools across the planet, children learned about heroes who stood against impossible odds. They read stories about individuals who changed history through simple acts of courage. They played games where small groups defeated larger enemies through determination and clever tactics. In training centers, soldiers and police officers and firefighters practiced scenarios where they would have to choose between personal safety and protecting others. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but acting correctly despite being afraid. And in remote forests, in dangerous neighborhoods, in hospitals and schools and homes around the world, ordinary people faced their own bears every day. Most of these battles were small and private. A parent staying awake all night with a sick child, a teacher standing up to bullies, a neighbor helping during a disaster. But occasionally, when circumstances aligned, someone like Nari would find themselves facing a moment that demanded everything they had. And most of the time, humans surprised themselves by discovering they had more courage than they thought. 5 years after the failed invasion, the Veltar Empire maintained a monitoring station at the edge of Earth's solar system. The Watchers had a simple mission: observe and report any significant changes in human behavior or technology. But mostly they just watched in fascination as humanity continued to be human. Commander Taman, now promoted to admiral, visited the mine station occasionally. He would study the latest reports and shake his head in amazement. Humans landing on their moon. Humans sending machines to other planets. Humans working together to solve global problems. Humans still creating stories about heroes who faced impossible odds. They are expanding into space, reported the station commander during his last visit. Should we be concerned? Taman thought about it. A species that valued courage above survival, spreading across the galaxy. A civilization that celebrated sacrifice, carrying their values to other worlds. People who fought bears with hiking sticks, armed with advanced technology and the entire universe to explore. No, he said finally. I think we should be hopeful. Sir, maybe they will teach the rest of us how to be brave again. Deep in space, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that one small blue planet had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Not through conquest or technology, but through the simple act of a forest ranger who decided that some things were worth fighting for, even when you couldn't win, especially when you couldn't win.